Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Farming Podcast. And today I'm heading down south to Milton Keynes in tropical Buckinghamshire to talk to farmer Tom Edmondson. Tom, how are you?
Tropical, yeah, no, I'm warm. Yeah, it's certainly throwing another curveball this year, isn't it? With the weather starting off in this neck of the woods in September last year, 270, 280 millimeters of rain through to through wet bits and dry bits, and here we are, and it's cooled down a bit today, thankfully, but it was 32 yesterday, and it has been for quite a lot of the last 2 weeks, as I'm sure it has been for a lot of people. So
Yeah, it's even been hot here in North Wales, and all my life I've been hearing about the summer of 1976 from my
yeah,
dad.
yeah.
Like as if he, fetched the cows on a camel like Lawrence of Arabia or something. And so I do wonder now whether we're kind of touching 1976 levels. It's been really really hot, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, and 1976 is the one that that generation talk about a lot, and my father-in-law keeps telling me about it. He's North Yorkshire farmer, and on the edge of the moors, and he was telling me about it the other day. But we've had this year, and then 3 years ago it was 40 degrees, and before
Mm.
that we had another 30. So we've had they're coming more regularly, aren't they? These extremes in heat and rain. So it's
It's
interesting times.
almost as if the climate's changing, Tom.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get this out of the way, Tom. You are a massive bloke. You are like what the Museum of English Rural Life would describe you as an absolute unit.
Yeah.
And
I've been called worse things.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how sick of you are people asking you how tall you are? Because everybody must comment on it when they see you.
Well, sometimes, well, most of the time, it's the first question. If someone's
Yeah.
a very polite character, it's the second or third question they ask me. But yeah, no, I took a decision fairly early on in my life that I was going to own it, and because if I got annoyed by it, I'd spend my whole life really quite pissed off.
Yeah.
Because even on a daily basis, little old ladies come along and they'll ask me, and I'll be in the supermarket, and please, can you get that thing off the high shelf for me, and all that kind of stuff. But not that I go to the supermarket very often anymore. But yeah, I really don't mind. I am very pleased that my formative years were pre smartphones
Yeah.
and cameras, because I always thought when I was younger there'd be a picture of me in every town, in every even with disposable cameras. But yeah, since the advent of smartphones, I've been stood in a pub and just be aware of somebody sidling up behind me and taking a picture of me with their friend back to back, which does annoy me, to be honest. But just come and say hello and we'll have a chat and we're all good. But
Was
no.
it handy for sport when you were younger?
Oh, I'm terrible at sport. All my
Oh, right.
friends will
Okay.
tell you, yeah, no. It's a waste. My rugby coach when I was a colt said, "Tom, you've got all this farm. Just go out and run and learn to run." And honestly, and I just was far more interested, even at a younger age, in the social part of sport than I was in the
Well,
actual
that's the most
achievement of
important
it.
part.
And this Welsh chap from college, I don't know if you might remember, Dando, his name was, it annoyed him ever so much. But I was rubbish at rugby. He'd come and tell me when he was drunk how annoyed he was that I should be much better and playing for the first team. But yeah, never mind. It wasn't my cup of tea.
Oh dear. Oh well. Anyway, more importantly, tell me about the area where you farm. Down, as we said, Buckinghamshire. It's kind of south
Yeah,
central England, isn't it?
that's it. Yeah, we're not East Midlands or East Anglia or the South East. We're sort of all three where we sit. So we never, when there's meetings going on, they always tend to be in the centre of a region. So we have to travel for everything. But yeah, we're on the banks of the Ouse. We're lucky enough to have a mile and a quarter on the banks of the River Ouse, fairly far upstream, not far from the source. And then we're just upstream of Milton Keynes, which has got 350,000 people living in it. And I can see it from the window from where I'm sat. It's clay lands. It's very heavy clay soil, and has been heavily farmed for a lot of years.
Mostly arable farms in that area, or
Mostly
there's
arable
still.
farms in this area. Yes, there is a few more livestock focused farms. It would have historically all been livestock. When my
Mm.
parents, when my dad moved here with my uncle in 1967, it was a dairy unit, and it was all it was pipe for water everywhere, and
Mm.
there's concrete troughs in all the hedges, and and it's fenced, but that's degrading pretty fast now. But we've got a bit of work to do there.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was, yeah, traditionally a livestock unit, heavy clay soil. It does lend itself much more to that than it grows cereals very well. It grows wheat very well if you get everything right. But it droughts out and it goes wet, and it's got 2 days between being too wet and too dry when it turns into concrete. So we're trying to sort of extend that
Yeah.
workable
Okay.
period.
More on that shortly. But
Yeah,
your dad moved there in 1967. Then
he did.
was he from another farm, or was he first generation farmer?
My grandfather was a first generation farmer,
Okay.
but he was in that world. And my grandmother's side of the family, uh, Germans, and they'd come over here pre World War One. They were viticulturists, and they'd had
Oh
problems with
wow.
their vineyards in Germany, and had to move away. And they moved to the northwest,
Wow.
where
Interesting.
they they started a butcher's shop. And anyone who's a Burnley Football Club fan would have probably eaten my family's pies and things like that, because they're a big Hafner's butchers supply all the pies and things up there.
Wow.
And then grandfather's side of the family, he'd go from farm to farm back in the time when people used to do that a bit more, I think. And I've heard
Yeah.
stories of whole farms and stock being moved on trains and milking somewhere in the
Yeah.
morning, milking somewhere in the afternoon when there's a lot more branch lines.
That's
And he
true.
went from farm to farm, so they've been in Wiltshire, the Cotswolds, Burnley, and that kind of neck of the woods.
Mm.
And then they moved to here from the Cotswolds. But yeah,
Wow.
place between Stow on the Wold and Bolton on the Water. And then they came. That was where my grandfather had a unit,
Right.
and
Okay.
then my uncle and my dad were able to get a tenancy where we are now.
All right. Okay. So, what did the farm look like when you were growing up? It's obviously an ex-dairy farm when your dad moved there, but what was it like when you were growing up? What was your dad doing on the farm then?
They quickly moved it away from dairy, and this house here was the milking parlour
Okay.
that I live in now. And he moved it very quickly across to pigs. That was always his passion. When he was at school, he decided he was going to get some pigs and raise them on food waste, and then sell them back to the kitchens in the school that he was at. So even from sort of 10 or 12 years old, Dad was very much a pig man, and always has been. And so when they moved here, they took the farm on as a tenancy, and my uncle did the cows and the sheep, the barley beef and sheep and arable, and my dad raised pigs. So yeah, he all the way from rearing to finishing.
Okay. So, did you grow up on the farm then with a love of pigs as well? Was it something that kind of, I don't know, did you always want to be a pig farmer or?
No, I didn't want to be a pig farmer. No, I loved working on the farm. I
Yeah.
was always very keen to help on the arable, because tractors, obviously, what
Yeah.
what small kid doesn't love tractors?
Yeah.
And
Of course.
so I was always quite interested in that. But I'd always go and help Dad. We didn't have much in the way of feeding systems. The feeding systems were family and a chap called Jeff that worked for us and had worked for us forever. I think had been around for longer than my mum at one point. And
Every farm needs a Jeff
on the
character.
farm, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting tattoos. I remember when I was young, he did show me his inappropriate tattoos from when he was a merchant seaman. But so everything was done by hand. So I would always be pitching in and chucking food about the pigs and all that kind of stuff. But it was a very physical pig unit. So there was
Hmm.
always sort of a lot to do.
Hmm.
And I did help out with that, yeah. But it didn't instill a love of pig farming in me. No, definitely not.
Yeah. But you did want to be a farmer or involved in farming.
I always wanted to be involved in farming. Yeah, I did. And I liked being within farming, but at the time, I couldn't really see a place for me on our actual farm,
Hmm.
because it's only small, 300 acres. And when you go to college, you learn, and you used to go and do all the projects, and you do plans to work out how you can go out and buy a farm and enterprises you can do to make money on your farm. And it was never based on a 300-acre unit.
Mm.
So I sort of found myself, not straight away, But as I got a bit older and found a bit more confidence in myself and my um, knowledge and abilities, I found myself in the sort of ancillary associated industry, advising and things like that. And that's where I sort of refound my love for farming as it exists on our unit today, because I realised it can be a bit more interesting than it had been in my eyes when I was growing up. There's a lot more to it than you sort of first see, your sort of first feelings towards it.
Yeah. So you did you study agriculture at university?
I studied a few things at
Oh,
university.
did you?
Yeah, I was quite a social butterfly. I didn't do very well at my A levels. That kind of learning wasn't right for me, and I got a U in general studies, which proves that I'm know a few things about, and not a lot about quite a few things, which could have sort of set me up fairly well even
This
today,
is
I
this
would
is a
say.
recurring theme on this podcast. So I just don't. I think formal education, a lot of farmers' children study in it. I know previous guest Ben Taylor Davis can talk about this, but
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
formal education doesn't suit a lot of farmers, does it?
And at a similar time, I'd found, young farmers and rugby, and I got my first driving license. I got a driving license, and was able to sort of go out and do my own thing, and found pints and being sociable and having a lovely time and being a novelty because, as you've already pointed out, I'm 7 foot tall and stand out in a crowd, so you always find yourself talking to all sorts of people, which has
Yeah.
developed me, as a person, definitely.
Mm.
But it's not. It didn't help my education because I was too busy being social,
Yeah.
and so I started on the foundation course, or color by numbers, or dot to dot, or whatever your friends who were doing a degree at the time would call it, being mean. But and then moved into realm. It was rural land management, and I like the idea of doing that, but the law and the dates and the case laws just never stuck in my mind, and that's pretty key for being able to do that kind of role.
Mm.
I think, and it just never stuck. So I moved across to an HND in agriculture in the end, which was a bit more practical than some of the degree subjects, some of the topics, and that suited me a bit better. And so I was there for a long time, but only came out with an HND at the end of it.
Yeah. But I guess doing those different courses and meeting so many different people and I don't know, give you a lot of ideas and maybe broaden your horizons a bit.
Yes, it certainly did give me a sort of a broader range of experiences and meeting a lot of people. But at the time, we were all at agricultural college between the ages of 18 and 21, 22. And to say that gave me a diverse group of people to talk to would be would be false, I would
Yeah.
say. But once we've all sort of gone out into the world and spread our wings and found ourselves in different careers and different places, that has given me, yes, definitely a good opportunity. The people have met and have known over the years, at the time,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
I would say. But
All right. When did you first come across the concept of regenerative agriculture? When was the first time you heard that talked about or the phrase?
when we were in the early 2000s, conservation agriculture was talked
Yeah.
about, but that was more around sort of no-till and
Yeah.
reducing diesel usage, saving time, and man units. But when I was working, I found myself through various different advisory roles, and eventually found myself working at the local water company as a catchment advisor. And our main sort of role was to reduce the amount of metaldehyde getting into the drinking water,
Okay.
because it was a real problem, particularly around the natural catchments, which is the area that drains straight into the reservoirs. So there's no, level of protection against those, to those receptors, against accidental spreading, or
Yeah.
overspreading, or heavy rainfall following a
Yeah.
perfectly normal application would still find its way into the system. So we were trying to sort of manage those areas, and cover cropping came up as a management tool, and then also changing your cultivation strategy, and moving fields away from being purely arable and having a more mixed approach to it. And in the conversations around cover crops in those sort of earlier years, which where would have been 2012, 13, 14, it was starting to be more talked about then, but I never really paid too much attention to it. But I did pay attention to it, but it never really sort of sank into me as being an option
Yeah.
until we were sort of a few years down the line of me advising and seeing some other people doing things, going to a lot of field days where we were talking about cover crops, Project Lamport, and David Purdy, sort of Agrivis trial site, where they're looking at continuous use of cover crops, direct drilled spring wheat into that. Yeah, that was being done within the catchment that was part of the my main drinking water catchment in Northampton. So I was exposed to it there, and it sort of just lots of tiny hammers eventually sort of started to trickle in that this could be something that we could do. And then we started farming. We got the opportunity to take our farm back in hand. So my dad stepped away from the arable. My uncle stepped away from the arable, and the farm was a partnership, got dissolved in the when I was at college in the early 2000s, and we took on a contract farmer to do the arable, and he'd been farming it for years and years and years. And he came to us in 2014 and said, right, I'm not doing it. He came in to combine the wheat, and he said, when I've combined this, I'm not coming back. That's me. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So at that point, we had to make a very fast decision as to what we were going to do, and whether we were going to take the arable back in hand or try and find another contractor. And it was one of these cases as if you don't say the time's never right, is it, for these things? It's like, I'm not quite ready, and I've got the day job, and we're contracted fattening pigs as well on the farm. We've been doing that for 2 years, which had given us, we'd started after saying, no, I'm never going to do pigs. The opportunity in all the empty sheds, in sort of 2012 when, I just got married and we were looking at buying a house in the area and realizing that we couldn't afford anything on two salaries at the time. We both had day jobs, and we realized actually we couldn't afford to do anything. So we needed to make a bit more money, even on salaries.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, okay, well, we'll get these contract fattening pigs, and we'll use that money to, start a business, and we use it to get a bit more money in, and hopefully we'll be able to afford to either buy somewhere or build somewhere, which we've done here. But so we've been doing that for a couple of years, putting the muck on the land in bulk and seeing improvements in that. And then 2 years later, when we already had this business, was when the opportunity came for us to do the arable. So we're like, right, okay, yes, let's do that. Still both got day jobs. Had our first child had just been born. So we've got quite a lot on doing all those things. And we went full input. We thought, right, okay, how do we do this? How did I learn to do this when I was at college? Well, I learned that you turn the soil over and you chuck all the chemicals on it that the agronomist tells you to, and the fertilizer, and at the end of it, you get 10 tons or 12 tons if you're feeling really confident a hectare out of it, and you make lots of money. And we tried to do that because I had all the day jobs. We had the day jobs and the kids and everything else and the pigs. You ended up spraying when you could spray, not when you needed to spray, when you had the time to, and all this kind of thing. So my timeliness was never great. But then also we sort of found ourselves, the first year we did it, we got it all in, we'd got all the timers right. We thought we ticked all the boxes, and all the headlands failed because it was just, too wet. We hadn't treated it right. We hadn't cultivated it right, or what things we'd done wrong, I don't know, but you could sort of go into it with such hope.
You've got to be hopeful to be a farmer.
You've got to be hopeful. We are secret optimists, aren't we?
We really
are. Keep doing it, would we? We might have very gruff exteriors and feel like we're the most negative people out there, but actually, if we weren't secret positive, secret positive thinkers, we wouldn't keep doing it, would we?
Yeah.
But and it did 6.2 tons that first year per hectare, the wheat, and didn't make me a lot of money.
No.
And we tried that a couple more years yeah, and didn't get much better at it, to be honest. And so my timeline sort of jumping all over the place to sort of answer your question, because there was an awful lot of things happening in parallel all at the same time
Yeah.
that sort of have got me to a point where I thought, right, let's have a go at this. It's time to make a change. I'm not quite happy with what we're doing and how we've been doing it, and actually, it is time to try something different. Um, and I went to Groundswell, the first Groundswell I went to, which in 2018. And I saw a chap called Dan Kittredge talk, who was there
Hmm.
this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also saw who else was there that year? Somebody talking about mob grazing. I thought, oh, mob grazing, I can go for that. I can understand that. That's easy. You know, move the fences. The cows move on. They move their muck, and they move away from the, move away from the muck, and they leave the worm burden and the flies behind them. And that makes sense. It's easy. And I went into another talk with Dan Kittredge and sat there and listened to him talking. And he stood up. He just not even a slide behind him. Back when it was in the barns, it was quite a while ago. There's maybe 700 or 800 people there, so it's different to what
I
it is
think
today.
think I was there.
Yeah, yeah. And he stood up and he said started talking about nutrient density in food and why our food is lacking in nutrients. It's a myriad of reasons, but it's we've selected for yield, we've selected for rapid growth, we've selected for evenness, we've not selected for evenness and flavor and quality of eating, and that's been driven by the sort of agricultural supply chain, but it's also
Mm.
been driven by farmers and our desire to do more, do it bigger, do it better, do it faster, make more money. Which is what it's all about. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
all got to make money. Um, but he sort of framed it in a way that made me think, that we're being chastised for decisions we'd made. And at the time, I wasn't ready to hear that, and I was
Mm.
really came out feeling really rather angry that somebody had the gall to stand up in front of us and tell us that we'd had a part to play in the reason
Mm.
that food was where it is today. Um, and then further down the line, a few more years of learning and opening my sort of eyes to it and realizing that actually, yes, food is a bit rubbish, and yes, we do have a part to play in that, and the fact we've been farming in a sort of full input way for all these years has created
Yeah.
the change in the food system. And if I'd have been able to grab him this year to tell him that that my mind has changed as to how I feel about now, and I'm fully prepared to accept that yes, we've got our part to play in that, and let's make a change and let's do something about it, because we've got lots of people to feed, and we've got our own family and our own bodies to feed as well. Beyond everything, if you can't produce something on your own farm that will fuel you in a positive way, not only physically but mentally, then we're doing something wrong, aren't we?
I
I
think so.
think.
It is hard sometimes to hear that, though, isn't it? I don't think you're alone in feeling like that initially, because as farmers, I often get frustrated because I think sometimes farmers are very reactive to criticism, but I totally understand why, because we're very proud of what we do, aren't we? And we work really
Mm-hmm.
hard, and so do
Mm-hmm.
so that's not being farmer exceptional. Everyone works hard, all industries, everyone works hard, but farmers,
Yeah.
often we're on our own. It's a big challenge. You can only speak for what you do for yourself, and it's hard as a family farm. You work hard, you've got bills to pay. And we're very proud of it, aren't we? That often
Yeah.
that there's that heritage involved, and it is hard sometimes to hear criticism, but at the end of the day, it's constructive criticism, isn't it? It's no one's trying to sort of pull you apart. It's just, yeah. I mean, you obviously, I guess, changed your mindset on that,
I
didn't
have
you?
changed my mindset. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And completely. But at the time, I wasn't ready to hear it. And
yeah,
yeah, then I just think there was probably people there, 2 weeks ago who went to a talk and probably weren't ready to hear something they've been
yeah.
told as well. We're all at different. I'm going to put the J word out there. We're all different parts. We're all different places in our journey.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
at that time, I was at the beginning of my journey to where
yeah.
I am today. But I could see something in the mob grazing, and so we went away and started doing that. And this sort of nutrient density piece became more the topic as you sort of realizing that your health isn't great, or maybe you've got a bit of a bad back, or you can't think straight, and you sort of start looking at you stop looking for solutions to your problem, start looking for reasons why you feel like that.
Mm.
And that sort of came along through a series of different things. Parenthood, obviously, for a lot of people, certainly changed my mindset on things.
Yeah.
Our oldest came away with a diagnosis for being ASD, autistic spectrum,
Hmm.
uh, and you sort of when you start sort of reading into that and don't stop looking for you start looking for ways you can help.
Yeah.
Him regulate his feelings and
Hmm.
sort of go to school on a daily basis and be able to operate within that environment. And we sort of came to a point of thinking, well, it's a lot of it is about what you put in your body. If you put rubbish in, then it doesn't help you focus,
Yeah.
and it doesn't give you the right fuel to be able to have a successful day in whatever you do in life, whether you're 5 years old or whether you're 43. It's very important that you put the right things in your body, and we can grow those things, and that's why I chose that was that's what we're going to do. So we had that going on, and then at the same time we'd gone from 1,000 contract fattening pigs to 2,000, and we were looking at going to 3,000 in order to sort of make enough money to put them into a different schooling system. Uh, and I got to a point with the pigs. We were contract fattening pigs, and we were doing it as part of a sort of vertically integrated supply chain. And we sort of found ourselves within this industry that uses pigs in the UK to move soya from South America through pigs reared in this country, the prime cuts of which were sold within supermarkets in this country. Good suit, some of the higher end supermarkets within
Yeah.
this country, and the carcass balance, which we couldn't sell, was getting frozen and sent to China. And we found ourselves within this globalized system, and I'm part of this massive wheel producing these pigs in a way that I didn't had started to not fit with my ethos,
Yeah.
and also my desire to what I wanted to see from the farm. I was becoming ever more commercialized, which isn't a bad thing. It just doesn't fit with where my where I found my mindset. And at
Mm.
that point, we had this going on, and we had all the pigs going on as well. And we had we had an incident. We had some particular genetics came in one herd, and we had an instance of sort of tail biting and vice. So we had lots of we had quite lots of tail biting going on. The weather conditions were unhelpful. It was foggy, then it was windy, then it was the weather kept changing. And we had a bad harvest that year nationally, so the food quality wasn't very good. And I found myself sort of going out there every morning and dealing with tail bitten pigs, and my mental health struggled for it badly. I was not in a good place.
Mm.
Everyone was very worried about me. Everything
Yeah.
was for me. Everything was problems, and I was sort of firing off at everybody and angry at all these different things that because I thought everything was against me, but actually, it was the system we'd created that was against me, and I had the ability to change that.
Mm.
So this was happening at the same time as the ASD diagnosis and my first groundswell. And I started reading a few different books and started realizing there is another way, and
I can relate to all of this, Tom.
maybe we should change that. And I
Yeah.
was in a horrible place, Will. I was in a really
Yeah.
bad place,
I
and
can very
everyone
much
was
relate.
really worried about me, and we weren't
Mm.
making much money really, despite having
Mm.
2,000 pigs and the arable, and both still having day job. Well, we had two kids by then, so I had a day job and that, and Mary was doing uh, book work, farm
Yeah.
book work. It's sort of in between times when she could with the children, and sort of keeping the whole lot going,
Mm.
and me going as well, and the children. There was a lot on her, and I was well. This has got to change. It's got to change because I don't
Hmm.
want to carry on doing this. I'd rather just not be here.
Yeah.
So, but we've got all these things we can do, and I started to say reading different things, and you start. I didn't start with Gabe Brown. I started with God, what is his name? Told I'm terrible with names. Well, all these people, but can't remember names.
There's a lot of books though, isn't there? There's a lot of great
Yeah,
regenerative agriculture books.
but this one was just about. It's the same chap I saw talking in 2018 with. with Daniel Kitteridge, and he was from Kansas, I think, and he bred his cows to be smaller just to work on grass, and he was people are going to be shouting in the comments in this. I'll remember the end of the conference anyway,
Don't
by the
worry.
end of this talk anyway, and it was so I started with that one, and then I went to Dirt to Soil by Gabe, and then I read David Montgomery's books. Have you read those?
Yes.
Dirt, The Erosion of Civilization is
Yeah.
really, really heavy going, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
really dark. But then you move on to Growing a Revolution, and it's
Yeah.
talking about these positive changes you can make. They're all books about the system changing in America. But if it works for them, it can work for anybody really, because it's system change rather
Mm.
than a mindset change rather than a system change, isn't it? And so that I'm sure we can take some of these and do something about this. But I read all of those and took it in and thought, yeah, we can do this. But I never really made too many changes.
Mm.
And then I read Dirt Soil by Nicole Masters,
Yeah.
and she at the start of it, she explains how she'd been exposed to paraquat running. She was barefoot Kiwi living in somewhere in the Far East,
Hmm.
and she was running up and down. She'd been exposed to paraquat, and it had given her various different health issues
Yeah.
in her life. Bad back, brain fog, seized neck, all these different things. And when I left college, one of my the second proper job out of college was on a potato growing farm up in Yorkshire. I was the spray man, so I was
Mm.
exposed to all this stuff, and I'd had a bad experience with paraquat. I think 30 or 40 days before it was banned,
Right.
and
Okay.
the bottom pipe blew off the induction hopper,
Right.
absolutely covered me head to toe in neat paraquat, and I had some safety gear on, but not all the safety gear. So
Yeah.
luckily, I was in the yard. The yard where I filled the sprayer we were lucky enough to have a house on the farm because it was a big unit, a big farm unit. So we
Yeah.
were lucky enough to rent that, and it was at lunchtime. All the other people that worked there all sat in the tea room next to my house, having their lunch, as they call it, their lunch and their bait and things like that. But and there's me, sort of bright green in my underpants, running across the yard because I just stripped off completely and just run across the yard to get all this green dye off of me. But and about
Horrendous.
3 weeks later, my back went,
Right. Okay.
and I stood, and then sort of
Mm.
and they thought nothing of it because you're young, and I thought, well, I was spraying all day. Then we get out and
Yeah.
we'd sort of muck some chicken sheds out, and they were sort of 5 foot at the eaves, and you'd be in there sweeping away, and it's just bad luck. My back's
Mm.
gone. But then I read that and realised actually all these things have been completely interconnected, and had driven a lot of my sort of early working life, the bad back I'd experienced, and all this kind of stuff, and it was all down to what we'd been exposing ourselves to. And at that point, I just went, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm sick of it. Don't want to
Mm.
do, I've not eliminated the sprays I use, but we have vastly reduced them from where we were. And, who knows where we're going to go from here, but, we're down sort of 60 to 80% on agrochemicals we use on farm now, just changing the way we do things. And that's, how we've got to sort of that it's just getting to the beginning of that change in mindset
So
from.
what were some of the big major changes you made on the farm? How did you go from what you were to what you are now? Because as we're going to find out what the farm looks like now in a minute,
Yeah,
but how did you start to make that change? Because it's not easy to make big changes on a system that you've kind of said you weren't necessarily making a lot of money, but I guess you were
no,
turning over a lot of money, and
I was, yeah, I was turning over
it's
money.
working okay. It's working okay,
Yeah,
but
it
like
was
how
working.
it's
Yeah, we
it's
were still in business.
yeah, but it's not easy to make those big changes then, is it? It's not easy to turn a moving ship. I'm mixing my metaphors terribly there, but
uh,
but how do you even begin to start that?
as it was the big change was to Gay Brown various. It's the sort of compaction between your ears, and
Yeah.
if you can start breaking that and start thinking about things in a slightly different way, and starting to educate yourself as to how these soil and plant health systems work, then you can create an environment where your reliance on agrochemicals is reduced, not
Mm.
eliminated yet. I think we could get to a point where they are, but today they're not, because we've been farming. This farm has been farmed chemically for as long as we've had it,
Yeah.
which is 1967, or as long as we had it at that point. And for me, the change in the direction of the movement of our ship was those mental health concerns
Mm.
and loss in belief in the system I was working within, and concern for future generations and my own health and my family happiness that drove me to make those changes, and the realization that they were problems because of the way I'd been managing it, and not blaming it on somebody else, and then
Mm.
realizing that actually I can change, and then that will change my system, and it will hopefully make my life
It's quite
not easier
quite
but better.
liberating, that, isn't it? That
Yeah,
realization, I think, is quite liberating, isn't it?
a lot of these things are said in hindsight, and at the
Mm.
time I didn't really realizing this. I never really realized this was all happening. It was
Mm.
happening, obviously I realized that, but I didn't really realize how I it's hard to explain how I got to this point,
Mm.
because of all these things that just happened. And then one day it was like, well, actually, and I found myself in a completely different place, um, which is hard to. It's not very helpful to somebody who's trying to, find a way to change. But sort of part of the reason I want to do this podcast is to just let people realize that it's not that difficult, and it just you've just got to change the way you look at things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people I've spoken to for the podcast, and a lot of just my farming friends, I think a lot of people are maybe feeling a little bit disillusioned at the moment.
Yeah,
They're just feeling a bit, for a variety of reasons, but I think a lot of people are struggling a little bit. So a lot of people will be able to relate to everything you've just said. Those pressures and everything building at once is, it's a lot, isn't it? But
you
yeah,
you're on your farm, you're busy, a
yeah.
harvest now, and then we get harvest out of the way, we're worried about drilling, excuse me, and then we're running out of grass and all these
Mm,
different things, and the drought and politics overlaid over the top of all of that as well. And it's
yeah.
very easy to feel disillusioned and isolated,
I guess a feeling that the system's broken as well,
yeah.
but not knowing how you can possibly do anything about it on your own. I think a lot of people are struggling with.
Mm.
You want to make the positive changes, and I think most farmers care about the environment, and you
Yeah.
want to do something, but on your own, you're so busy with the day-to-day stuff and just paying the bills, you don't have an awful lot of time maybe to even know where to begin, I guess.
we I understand, how farmers must feel. We've all got a different issues, and we've got bills to pay, we've got debt to service, we've got machinery to pay for, we've got inputs to pay, we've got combine, we've got harvest to get in and combines to fix, and all these kind of things. And to find the headspace to then say, all right, I'm going to make a change,
Yeah,
is sadly for me, it was driven by those issues. But
yeah.
and I'd like to make it sound less scary for somebody who hopefully hasn't got to that point yet, and
Mm,
is just feeling a bit, you know, against it, to be able to hopefully make some of those positive changes for them,
yeah,
for themselves, as much as for anything really, whether it be business or whatever, because we've still got debts to pay, haven't we? We've still got all these things to do.
yeah.
So,
So
but you can do it.
what does the farm look like now then? Like, give us an illustration with it, what it did look like, but now, I mean, it's totally different, doesn't it?
It's
So,
completely, yeah, it is. Yeah, we had 200 acres of arable. We had 100 acres of permanent pasture grass. Some of it's ridge and furrow, and the rest of it's flood meadow. So,
okay.
it's only ever going to be permanent pasture. And then we had all these buildings which Dad used to rear pigs in. So we had, quite a lot of space for that. So when I first came back to it, it looked like contract fattening pigs in the sheds that we had, and then 200 acres of arable farmed, other than the muck from the pigs going on the arable, farmed in complete isolation with each other. And the arable, and the grassland was being let out to a neighbour, and she was keeping her sheep on it. And she got a bit older and decided that she didn't want to keep as many sheep, so her son took it over and just started making silage off of it, and that's all it was being. Not the ridge and furrow, that still had sheep on it, but being farmed by somebody else, and then so that's how we were when we started to make the changes. And but then previous to that, it had been from 1999, no, 2000 to 2014, when the arable came back in hand. It was farmed by a neighbour who was contract farming it for Dad as well. So it was somebody else off farm looking after that, because Dad's a pig man, not an arable farmer. So he was never decided he didn't want to go and do the arable once my uncle stopped doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how it was. And then today, we've still got the arable and grassland. We've still got 100 acres permanent grassland, but now we're not farming it in isolation. We've got the stock back on the arable land. We're planting cover crops. We're planting sort of longer term covers, not grass lays, but sort of more long term species, which we're grazing with the cows and the sheep, and going down to this more sort of mixed farming system. Just jump to cows and sheep. So we got rid of the pigs. We got cows. We got a suckler herd of longhorn cows, and then we got some Jacob sheep. And we got some laying hens, and we've got a very small campsite. So we've gone from a couple of bigger enterprises to lots of smaller enterprises, all of which is mutually beneficial to each other, and easier to manage because of their scale, and their numbers are more in keeping with the sort of size of the farm and its ability, its capacity to hold to carry the livestock without having to buy any outside inputs.
Yeah. And for anyone who wants to see pictures of that, your website, tell us what your website's called, because I don't know whether you do your own photography or whether your wife does the photography, but whoever does it's really good at it. I showed my eldest daughter, and she was because she likes longhorn cattle, so she was impressed. But yeah, it's really cool.
Got a mixture of photos I've taken, and we've had a couple of photographers come out. One of our best friends, she's a photographer, so she's done a few pictures. And then during lockdown, we had another chap who was a bit spare. He was looking at creating a portfolio of people in different industries and taking pictures of them in their daily work. So he came and took some pictures as well. Yeah. So, but then mostly it's just me out there at the right time on the right day with a camera phone. So it's and Mary, my wife, she put the website together, and just self-taught. So she's done a really good job of that. You get a lot of nice comments about the website.
It's really cool, really impressive.
So it's Cranley Barn Farm Shop. Oh dear. I don't even know my own website.
People will find it, Cranley Barn Farm Shop.
If you Google Cranley Barn Farm Shop, then you'll find our Instagram, which is where most things happen, and Facebook, and then there's a lot more information on the website as well.
Yeah. So why did you choose the different breeds of livestock when you were looking at cattle and sheep and chickens? What was it just particular ones you liked, or were there different reasons, or?
When the first different species we brought onto the farm were the cows.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a few things, and firstly was I'd like a native breed. I wanted something that would perform in a forage-based system. I wanted an animal that was reasonably locally adapted to our climate, and I also wanted a wide gene pool, so we didn't have to worry about interbreeding and all this kind of thing. So Longhorn ticked all the boxes. They were modernised 300 years ago by a chap called Bakewell in Leicestershire, which isn't far from here, and because they've been voted by several celebrity chefs the tastiest steak, they're no longer a rare breed. They're now just a native species. So the gene pool was wide and the availability was there as well. So it's ticked a lot of boxes for me. Yeah, it did, and they look right within the landscape as well.
They do look great, don't they?
And now we direct sell all our produce for the customers to come down the drive and see a longhorn as they drive along. It looks like their vision of what a farm should look like, which is quite a bucolic way of sort of looking at it. But it just sort of fits within our system and within our landscape.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the sheep?
The sheep Jacobs, yeah. So similar mindset as well. Is we wanted something that would do well on forage. So we run a Jacob breeding flock. There was a few other things that have snuck in there over the years as well. But and then we've got two different ram lines. So we run a Texel ram and then a Jacob ram as well to breed replacements. And then the Texel for the terminal sire as well. So we've got the Texel rams that are coming through, which finish a lot quicker. And then the Jacob ram lambs, they come through as well, and we finish them as hogget. So for the direct selling point, we have it enables us to spread our animals across a full year as well. And then breed those purebred replacements because they're good mothers. They just get on with it. On a forage-based system, they don't get overly fat, so they lamb well without too much intervention. We're selecting for ease of lambing, so anything that doesn't lamb easily is going through into the livestock, into the shop as well. Mm-hmm. So we're sort of we're trying not to breed back from those. We're only a few years into it now, so we're just getting our numbers to a point now where we're able to be a lot more dogged about what we choose to breed back from and what we choose to not. So yeah, we're starting to select some of those problems out, like bad feet, poor mothering, poor udders, and things like that. So
when did you open the shop? How long have you been direct selling?
6 years now. Yeah, we opened it in June 2019 was when we opened the farm shop, and at that point we were still at the back end of the contract fattening pigs. So we were selling, straw-based pigs through the shop, and we had 12 laying hens at the time. So we sort of came into the direct selling because we were trying to manage our cash flow. The way we got paid for keeping the pigs meant that there was a sort of 8 to 10 week period where we didn't have a lot of money coming in. Mm-hmm. So we thought, well, that coincided with when the pigs were fat and ready to go. So we thought, well, if we start direct selling these pigs, then it will buffer that cash flow issue. And people coming down, they were loving it. It was great. They're so pleased to be able to come and buy direct from the person that has reared these animals and actually come down and see where they've come from and have that level of connectivity to what they were eating. And shortly after we started doing it, a few months after we started doing it, it was lockdown. So we went from starting doing it, just tickling away quietly, to all of a sudden no one could get any food, and all of a sudden we were swamped by all these people that had found us on the internet, and we had sort of 24 pigs in the freezer that we thought were going to last us for ages, and then all of a sudden they were gone in 2 weekends. And I think the last weekend we had a super sausage Saturday because that was all we had to sell. everything else was gone. So between starting this direct selling and lockdown, it put us in front of a lot of customers that wouldn't maybe have otherwise found us. And whilst that was also happening, people were shut away at home and maybe looking at what they're eating and where their food came from, and how they would get it if this kind of food supply issues continued. And it grew our customer base quite rapidly. And whilst they were coming and buying pork, they were asking for lamb, they're asking for more eggs, they're asking for beef, because they wanted to be able to get everything. And at the time, we looked at it during lockdown and we thought, well, do we go out and start buying from other people and reselling, or do we just carry on as we are, selling what we've got? Because we didn't really want to become shopkeepers. We just wanted to add the most value to our produce by selling it direct, and shorten that supply chain. And then all these people coming in asking for it alongside all the other things we had going on that we were talking about earlier made me realize that actually people do want to buy their produce from the farmer, and they do want it reared in a particular way. And when you are exposed on a daily basis to those customers, you get to realize actually what they're after. And it didn't necessarily completely match up with what I thought they'd want
Yeah.
as a farmer. And because I'd never really talked to the consumer, we'd always produced all these pigs and
Yeah.
grain and sent it away off on a lorry, and you get an email back saying, "Oh, thanks very much. Here's your weight ranges, and here's the good
Mm.
ones, and here's the bad ones." But never actually people asking for particular cuts and animals reared in a particular way, and it made us realise that actually there is scope for us to do more, which is when we started getting the cows and the sheep in, and they did want it reared in a particular way, i.e., grass fed, low input. They're not worried about antibiotic usage and wormer usage and all these kinds of things. Um, so we could produce this meat and have a market for it for people who wanted it. So why not? Let's have a go and see how we get along with it. But,
Did you did you enjoy those interactions? Did you? I feel like I'm asking you a question I know the answer to, but I feel like you from the tone of your voice and your enthusiasm, it sounded like you did. Getting back and talking to the customer, and as you said, sort of reducing that ridiculously long food supply chain we're all part of. Did you? I don't know. Did that suddenly think? Did you suddenly think, well, shit, this is what it's all about?
I did. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I thought. Yeah,
yeah,
yes, because you spend all these years working in isolation, thinking you're
yeah.
doing what people want, and then all of a sudden you're seeing the whites of their eyes, and they're telling you
Mm,
what they do like. Sometimes they're telling you what they don't like. Mostly it's positive feedback, and generally it's around, it's a bit fat or it's a bit lean, or
mm,
that's the complaints. But generally that everyone's very, very happy with what you're producing and how you're producing it, and having that direct contact with these customers and these people, and now a lot of them friends who've been coming for a long time,
yeah,
really was the final piece in the puzzle for me to realize that we can farm in this regenerative way with mixed species, and look at the farm as a whole rather than each individual enterprise in its own, on its own. We're now looking at everything as a whole picture, and it enables us to produce this, really quality, tasty, well kept product, and sell it to the people that are asking for it and demand it and are very thankful for it too. And you realize that despite what you read, or despite the negative things you might find on social media or in the press or whatever, actually the general public are highly supportive of what we
yeah,
do and are very keen to see us make these positive changes, for not only for our farming system, but for the environment, for the animal welfare, for the animal health, for our business, and for all of us as people to flourish and do things in a much more positive way.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm sort of smiling throughout everything you said there because yeah, it's great. I mean, I got very excited as well when I looked on your website that your wife makes sourdough bread.
Yes, yeah, she does. Yeah,
I
that's
mean, I mean, I mean, if we had access to that much sourdough bread, I'd be the size of a house. So I don't know how you managed to. You must have more self-control than me.
oh no, no, she sells it all, Will. So I only get
You
to, I only
can't eat any.
I only get to eat leftovers. So it's yeah, yeah, that was a bit of a. We got into that back in 2019-20 again.
Mm.
We found a podcast series called Cereals by Farmerama. Have you heard that?
Yes, I listened to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
talked and it talked to farmers, bakers,
yeah.
millers,
That's right.
everybody within this supply chain about the modern bread system,
Mm.
and again about everything we've talked about, and how we've all got a part to play in improving bread. And we loved and we listened to that, and we thought, and there was people milling their own grains and growing heritage grains and ancient grains and all these things, and and then they were taking it to the bakers. A small food bakery in Nottingham was one of them, and saying that here's this grain. The the big industrialized bread making system says it's not got high enough protein. We can't do anything with this, and they're
Mm.
producing this amazing nutrient dense sourdough bread from it, that from a product that the system tells us
Yeah.
we can't do anything with because the protein's not high enough, or the Hagberg's not good enough, or
Yeah.
all these things that we use to sort of negotiate the price we get for our grain at the end of the year that we've spent all this sort of time growing and nurturing and producing as best we can, and then you get to the end of it, it's like, oh no, it's not got this and it's not got that, and it's okay, fine. So she got the bit between her teeth, and she's like, well, no, because we grew some Crusoe and it was not high enough protein, so it got rejected. Went for food, and no, this is good bread. So she went off and made her first sourdough loaf. We borrowed a tabletop mill off somebody and milled
Yeah.
it and made a really amazing, tasty loaf. And that sort of started the bug for the sourdough making. And it's another thing it's this system change, and it's this whole change in mindset again. It's all part of the big puzzle, that sort of fitted in to find us where we've got to today. And now she does 120, 130 loaves a week she's making
Wow.
now. Yeah, we're in the process of building a bakery. Hopefully, if we
Wow.
have a good enough harvest and raise enough capital, then we're going
Yeah.
to finish the bakery that we started last year. We got the roof done last year and then ran out of money, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
we're
one
sort
step
of
at a
working
time.
our way along that and trying to do it as the
That's
business
awesome.
can support it, rather than borrowing more money to then go and sort of put into it. So it's all coming. We bought a new oven which does 12 loaves at a time, and
Yeah. That's
Mary
amazing.
has a lot of very early mornings, but the bug has got her firmly, as the soil bug does with me. And it's all about bacteria and all these kind of things. And it's
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
all
that's
talking about the
just
same thing, really, aren't we? When it comes down
absolutely.
to it, sourdough bread and food and soil health and all these different things. It's
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really cool. We're not going to have time to talk about all the enterprises on your farm, but I would
sorry, no,
just
there's a lot, but yeah. So
no, there is, and I guess it's that diversity word, isn't it? You've got a real diverse system now, and I would just anyone listening, just do have a look at the website because there's so many different cool things you do. But I do just want to ask you a little bit about the nature and biodiversity because
yeah.
we talked about the food and the business change. But as with all these things, and it's central to regenerative agriculture, is that biodiversity and nature on the farm, isn't it?
Mhm.
So I'm guessing that with that changing system, well, I know you will have seen quite dramatic changes to that, won't you?
Yeah, yeah. When we first sort of looked at the arable soils when I was doing the advisory job, and Jackie Stroud doing 30-minute worms. Remember that when we were all digging
Yeah,
up
yeah,
worms and spades
that's
full of
right.
worms? And I went to my arable fields thinking, oh, this is going to be amazing because we put all this pig muck on there and it's going to be great. We're going to have all these amazing worms. So I went around, I found 3 or 4 or something like that. I thought,
Mm,
what on earth is going on here? I thought we'd be in a great position.
yeah,
So okay, right. So what are we doing? And that was at the beginning of the journey into cover crops, but and also direct drilling. Well, not direct drilling, strip tillage. We've got a Claydon drill, 200 acres. We got one drill and we've stuck with that system because we can't afford to have multiple drills. But
yeah,
so we started. So we stopped cultivating and started direct drilling and using cover crops within that system. And over the years, we've got to a point where we're now as a grazing those cover crops, and we've got the cows on there. And last summer we've got a market garden as well. I didn't mention that, but myself and the market gardener James, we had cows grazing what was supposed to be a Westerwald uh, grass mix, and then turned out being a rose bay willow herb mix in the end.
okay,
But that took over anyway. It turns out that cows and sheep love eating rose bay willow herb, which is good. And the beehives we've got on alongside those fields also enjoyed it and made
I bet
half a
they
ton of
did.
summer honey, which was
Yeah,
great.
yeah, I bet they
But
did.
so we put the cows onto the rose bay willow herb and the sheep, and they munched through it. And the cow pats were absolutely alive with dung beetles, like more than I've ever found in the grass fields. I think it's just they're easier to find because they didn't burrow down quite as quickly away
Mm,
from you when you turn the cow pats over. We thought, but you turned the cow patch just disappeared, and it went from being a cow pat through being eaten by a dung beetle to just some really lovely looking friable soil. So we went and did 30-minute worms, kind of digging about in that field looking to see what we could find, and we found 87 worms in one spadeful
wow.
in
Okay.
7 years,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then on average across the field, it was in the 30s. Where the cowpats weren't, we were still digging the soil up and finding 30 or so. I think it was 36 or 30. Anyway, mid to high 30s of worms
Yeah.
in each spadeful, and then that soil health and those dung beetles and those worms have driven biodiversity change throughout the whole system. We're
Mm.
seeing a lot more small birds and mammals. You can find field voles out there. Skylarks love strip tillage because they like the gaps. Because skylarks normally nest in the wheelings, don't they?
Hmm.
But now you go out there and they all come up and they're flying up above and they're shouting at you and shouting at you to go away. And we never used to have skylarks like that. And it supported all these other sort of apex bird species as well. So we see more owls about. We see tawny and barn and little owls out here, but then we're also seeing sparrowhawks and kestrels and all these different predator species that are being supported by this whole system. And to start listing all the different insects and beasts I've taken pictures of. I'm busy. I've got an app on my phone called Seek, and I'll take a picture of it. It tells me what it is, and I've got these all logged, all the different things that I found. But we're starting to see red list species on the farm that we've never seen. So yellow hammers and
Yeah, yeah.
skylarks, grey partridge, a few others as well. But all these different species that are declining, farmland birds that are declining, actually here they're increasing.
What's your favorite species? Everyone's got one thing they get really excited about, and we've got curlews on our farm, and
Oh yeah, that is cool. Yeah,
we got a breeding pair of curlews, and I every time I see them in the spring, I just get my heart sings.
yeah. I do like seeing the skylarks. I do. It's great because they just sort of you go out there and you walk across your grass field or arable field and up they go and they're shouting at you and they're just so visible
It's very evocative, isn't it? The
and
skylarks.
they are and the increase in numbers as well. 6 years ago I'd go out and you see one or two, and now you go out there and there's 15 of them flying
Yeah,
up there
yeah, yeah.
shouting at you. So they're nesting all over the place, and it's just great to see that. And it's indicative of the change we've made in the system from the ground up. And
Mm.
you see more of those, then there's more of everything, isn't there? Really?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've talked about people probably sick of me talking about mental health, and you mentioned it earlier that you weren't in a good place.
No,
Does that is really, I mentioned the curlews, and we've done a bits on the farm in recent years, but knowing that I'm making a positive impact with nature, and I hope this doesn't sound cheesy, but it's been so important to my mental health, to
yeah,
improving my mental health. I feel so much happier in my environment because of the positive impact I'm having on the environment. Does that make sense?
it does completely. Yeah, it does. I mean, it's not cheesy at all, is it? It's so important because we all work and live in isolation, and if we can
Mm,
find these positives in the way we're doing things, and remember that we're making the changes we're making are feeding these positive changes, and not let
mm,
the negative things, which generally are completely out of our control, take over our mindset and our thought processes. And actually give the positive some time to and allow that to be the thing you take away from your day.
yeah.
And it's not always easy, is it? It's
No.
sometimes the negatives sort of build up and up and up, but you've got to find this sort of place where you can go back out there and remind and fuel your positive thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Following on from that, you are
Yeah,
also part of Nature Friendly Farming Network.
I am.
I've interviewed Martin before on the podcast. Martin Lyons is a good mate who started it, and interviewed a lot of people involved with NWFN. They're a fantastic organisation. I'm a member myself. But how did you come across them, and how did you get involved?
I came across them and signed up as a member a few years ago now because it aligned with how I thought we should be doing things,
Mm.
and how I thought that we should be moving our farming in that more nature friendly, positive direction. And I was lucky enough to be asked to be on two different panels at Groundswell last year and sharing our story about direct selling and changing mindset and sort of trying to maintain a positive sort of attitude on what we're doing. And One of them was with Nick Renison, who's NFFN, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I believe you will have interviewed Nick as well, and about feeding the good wolf and an old Indian proverb.
I haven't spoke to her. I haven't
So,
interviewed her yet, but I know she's on my two
oh, you
interview.
definitely should. You
Yeah,
definitely
she's on
should.
my two interview
So,
list. Yeah,
her and Liz are great, and Carbon Calling is a brilliant, a brilliant meeting they have up there. They should definitely, yeah, you should definitely be on your to do list. But
yeah,
yeah, so I was lucky enough to be asked to be on these two different two different panels at Groundswell, and Andrew from the NFFN came to the first one. I think he just happened by us and heard me talking, and then came and watched me do the second one as well. And at the end of that, he grabbed me and said, we think you'd be a great fit. Would you like to be a champion? And I said, well, yeah. What does that mean? What does that entail? And, so it's just all about promoting what you do and why you do it, and the positive changes you've seen within your farmed environment, but then also within your business, and use that as a sort of hopefully positive force within the farming industry to help people understand what it is, what it means for them, what it means for their business, and what they can do to farm in a more nature friendly way. And it's at the heart of our business, farming in a nature friendly way, but that's because the changes we've made to be regenerative have fueled those positive
yeah,
changes for nature.
yeah,
And we made those changes to sort of improve our resilience as a business, to improve our margin, and to help us start selling in a different way. And they have all fueled this positive change for nature. So it's been a business decision, but then that business decision has fueled my positive mental health, but it's also fueled our the nature within our farming system. So it's a win-win-win
yeah,
situation, really. I personally feel, from where we are now to where we were then, from where we were then to where we are now, it's a no-brainer, I think, personally. It's easy to say that when you've made all the changes, but
yeah. Was it Chris Clark always says nature? You have to think of nature as a stakeholder in your business, don't you?
yeah,
I,
it's very,
I,
yeah,
I think that's always a really good way of putting it.
it is.
So what are your future plans, Tom? Apart from getting the bakery finished, I guess that's one of your immediate
That
future
is, yeah, well,
plans.
the next 12 months anyway. But
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
hopefully over the winter. But yeah, no, Dad came around for Sunday dinner when we got back from Groundswell, and he said, "Right, what are we doing this year then? What idea do you come away with?" I said, "Well, have you heard of it? Have you heard about food forest, Dad?" He's like, no." Mum was like, "Yeah, I have." So yeah, Claire Hill from Plant On. I was talking to her about food forest. They've put one in, and yeah, that's certainly something I'm looking at doing. But I'd love to plant agroforestry on the farm. I would.
yeah. Are you going to the
Uh,
agroforestry show?
I'm not. I really haven't. Well, it's in September, isn't it? So you never
September.
know. Harvest might
September.
be done by then. I might.
Yeah.
Yes, I might be. But
I'm chairing a panel there. Yeah,
are you?
come along
Yeah.
on the
Okay.
second day. Yeah.
So that is and has been for 2 or 3 years. Yeah, it has been. It's I've been talking to Stephen Briggs about it forever. He's pretty
Yeah.
bored of it now. I think he's. Expect the next time I'll see him. Haven't you planted any trees yet, Tom? I have planted trees, but certainly not rows within the arable fields, which I'd love to do. And
Mhm.
and as we move further down the line with the regenerative farming, and my understanding of sort of chemical use and impact on the sort of wider environment around us, and us as humans within that system, I am becoming. I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 or 3 years' time you might be talking to me and I'll be organic. To be honest, I think that might be where
Yeah.
we end up
Okay.
with this, as we get more livestock, as our livestock numbers increase, and we take more arable land into more longer term grass lay rotation, and
Mm,
our arable area reduces. We want to move away from reliance on selling grain to the miller,
mm,
and start sort of growing more heritage grain type things that we learned about when we listened to the cereals
mm.
podcast. We've got our first foray into this year. I've got a variety called Mariatoba, probably completely destroyed the way you're supposed to say that, but and it's a blend, it's a spring wheat blend for it's been chosen for milling, and we've grown some of that this year in a no input plot on the farm, and it looks really well. It's the only thing that's still green at the moment. is the spring planted Mariotova. So and we're going to mill that. Well, we're going to save some of that for reseeding, and
Yeah.
we're going to mill some of it and see what kind of bread we can make from that. And the more
Oh my
we can
God, that
do
sounds
with
amazing.
small plot small plots of different grains, which we can then mill and sell direct to customer through our platform, then the better that will be. And yeah, as we increase our livestock numbers, that gives us more capacity to do that as well, because our
Yeah.
reliance on the arable income will reduce as we move down that line. And also the bread making, the flour that we need to buy for bread, which comes half a ton at the time at the moment
Yeah.
from Matthews, will as that gets to a ton and 2 tons a month, I think we might need to grow a bit more ourselves, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Awesome.
so
Well,
lots of things in the pipeline. How much of them I achieve in the short term, I don't know. But yeah, bakery will
really exciting.
is
Really
where we're at
exciting.
next. But
All right. Okay. Let's finish this off with the traditional hard-hitting questions. What's the best gig you've ever been to?
I'm not a big gig goer, to be
It can
honest.
be,
I
it can
always,
be, it can be music,
yeah,
comedy. It doesn't have to be, whatever.
I
Any
always
kind of
feel get
live
so
event.
guilty. I always feel so guilty. I like to stand at the back. I went to a Madness concert 2 or 3 years ago, and everyone was throwing things at me because I was in their way.
Do you know, I never thought about that, but yes,
And
I would
it's
I would
people get
imagine you're not
really
ideal to sit
upset.
behind in a
No,
cinema or
people get
something, are
most
you?
upset. But
Yeah.
we went to Pete Tong. Mary and I went to Pete Tong at the Royal Albert Hall. Pete Tong
Okay.
Classics, not so long since, and
Yeah.
which was great. I like a bit of I like a bit of sort of 90s noughties dance music, and now I'm older. When you put strings over the top of it, it's even better. But he
Yeah.
did one particular song, and they turned the organ on, and we were fairly close to the organ, and oh wow, it gave me the feels. It really did.
Oh,
It was
but
amazing. Like,
that
but
sounds
yeah,
awesome. Never
it's
been to
obviously
a
the age
Royal
I've got
Albert.
to where
Well, yeah.
hearing an organ starts sending me emotional sort of thing.
Well,
So,
we're all getting there.
yeah,
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I'm not good at remembering advice, but wasn't sure where to go with this. But one of my first advisory jobs after leaving, sort of, when I stopped working on farms for other people and went into the sort of associated industries, I worked for Agri for a bit,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there was an old boy there who went around doing sales training for everybody, and he was there when it was Dalgety, so that's showing how far back he's been around for.
Right.
But and maybe showing my age a bit as well. They hadn't been very long Agri when I was there, but he said that you always remember you're on farm as the expert, and it only takes 5% more knowledge than the next person to make you an expert. And at the time, when I was young and pretty arrogant and full of it, I thought, wow, sent me out on farm, and I thought I was ever so clever, telling all these farmers what they should be doing, and I knew 5% more than them, so I was an expert. And as I've
Yeah.
got older, I realised actually that all these people I've been listening to for all these years probably don't know very much more than I do.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at them thinking, wow, what's this person doing? I must do this and I must do that. And they, because they are, in inverted commas, the experts, but actually they probably don't know much more than me. And they certainly don't know it within my context. Only I can know that. And that was
Yeah.
sort of,
Everyone's winging it, aren't they?
everyone's winging it.
You learn
Yeah.
that when
Yeah.
you get older.
Yeah.
Everybody you meet is winging it in some way.
But at the time when I was in my 20s, I thought, made me
Yeah.
the bee's knees and off I went, sort of thing. But actually, yeah, now it's just completely flipped on my head as to who I trust and take advice
I know
from in
exactly
my
what you
older
mean.
age.
I know exactly what you mean. You mentioned some books earlier that
Yeah,
obviously had a big effect on you, but what's the best book you've ever read?
I'm gonna. I wasn't sure where to go with this because I've got a few different series of types of books I really like to read. I thought, do I make myself sound really intelligent? Tell you it's one of the Saul books I've read. And, lots of them have had some
Yeah.
huge impact on me and what we've done within our system. But and I find myself reading or listening to things now to sort of keep the positivity going, keep the positive
Yep.
mindset, to fuel that sort of desire to change and the belief that it can be done. And you're not the only lunatic in the room doing these things. There's lots of other people trying it, but actually the thing I would always go back to and read is the Tintin series of books. I'm an absolute
Oh
Tintin
my God,
fanatic.
what a great answer.
I'm a complete fanatic, and I couldn't tell you one of my favorite ones out. Well, I could do actually. It's Destination Moon's my favorite out of all of them. But
Love Tintin. Did you? I watched the movie, not the recent movie. Oh,
yeah,
it's 5 or 6 years ago. Did the
yeah, it
movie come
was.
out? I
Yeah,
watched it with
yeah.
my kids not long ago. I thought it was really good.
I I was front of the queue for the day it was
We.
released. I was, yeah, literally at the front of the queue. So get
That's really,
best
really
seat in the
cool.
cinema. Like, but yeah, that's yeah. I'm a complete geek when it comes to that. So
Oh, you're speaking to a fellow geek, so I love that. What a brilliant answer. Okay, if you could meet any historical figure, who would it be and why?
I've been thinking about this actually, and with all with all the soil books I've read, the one thing that I sort of can't quite get my head around is how things were before, and how we've got to where we are today.
Hmm.
And there's three names that keep cropping up in a lot of these books when you're looking back to the 1800s. It's sort of because a lot of the books we read are based on American
Yeah,
models, aren't they? Really,
yeah.
Gabe and David Montgomery and all these people, and I think Lewis and Clark, the Lewis and Clark expedition of 1805 or something like that, when they went, Thomas Jefferson realized that they
Yeah.
were degrading their land in the part of America where they were, and they needed to find more land to farm. And so they sent them west, you know, across the plains, across the Rockies to try and find a route to the
Have you read
Pacific.
Undaunted Courage? It's a book about
No, I
that.
haven't. No,
It's a
no.
book. It's a book about that expedition. It's
Oh,
incredible.
I'll definitely read that. Yeah,
Undaunted Courage. I can't remember who the author is now, but you'll find it.
but to actually be there and see that and see what it was like,
Yeah.
and the bison, the buffalo roaming, and and how the natives had sort of kept it all in this pristine environment that we have
Hmm.
subsequently completely wrecked through modern farming systems. And to see the difference between where it was and where it is now, I think would be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
would. So yeah, I would want to be there rather than actually
Yeah.
meet. Well, I
Yeah.
want to meet them, but I'd like to see what they saw.
That's a great answer. And that book is one of those books that kind of takes you there, if you know what I mean. It's really, really cool.
Oh yeah,
You should definitely read it.
next one.
Yeah. All right then. Last question, the big one. All-time favorite song.
Got a very eclectic mix, as I'm sure you're probably not surprised to hear. And I thought, well, how am I even going to sort of pull this apart and work out which my favorite one is? So I went on to my Sonos account. Other streaming services are available to see which my first liked song was, and it was "Rome" by the B-52s. But I wouldn't pick that as being my favorite song, to be honest. But
I wouldn't have guessed that in a million years.
no, but then I was thinking about it. Well, okay, what song do I know all the words to? And I was like, wow, okay, "Rapper's Delight" by the Sugar Hill Gang. I could do that word for word, the long version. So I don't, yeah. But then the one that I sort of always put on just to sort of pick my mood up, and I'll sing along and know all the words to "Dignity" by Deacon Blue.
Ah, yeah, okay.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I've got a really broad mix of musical taste. But
that's a great tune. Liverpool, I obviously live not in Wrexham, not a million miles from Liverpool, and Deacon Blue are massive in Liverpool. Did you know that?
yeah, yeah, I know.
Dignity's kind of if Deacon Blue ever play a tour, that it always absolutely goes off in Liverpool. It's
In
the
Liverpool,
place.
all right, okay, brilliant, yeah.
It's the place to see them. But
But I
yeah,
love it. Yeah, it's great. It's just all that kind of sort of big country and all those kind of all that kind of sort of Scottish rock, isn't it? I love it.
yeah, yeah.
Brilliant.
Awesome. Tom, it's been absolutely brilliant to hear more of your story. We didn't really touch on, but we were both at Harper Adams at the same time, weren't we?
Yeah,
But we
yeah.
kind of knew each other a little bit, but not really. But it's been really, really good to catch up with you. So yeah, keep up the good work. And if I'm ever down in Buckinghamshire, I do occasionally get into Middle England. Sometimes I escape from Wales. Sometimes I'll try and call in and see you because it just sounds brilliant. So.
We'll send you back with some sourdough.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean that's I mean that's the only reason why I'm coming. It's not to see you. I'm just coming for the Saturday. But yeah. Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. So yeah, no, brilliant to hear your story and thank you for taking the time. I know you're anxious to get going harvesting today. So
I can't believe 14th of July I'll be talking about looking at winter wheat, but there you go. What a year.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
madness,
know.
isn't it?
And
But there's lots of us in the same boat, isn't there?
there is. Hopefully I'm going to finish my barley today. So yeah, well fingers crossed for no more combine breakdowns. Anyway,
Good luck with
um
that.
Brilliant to speak to you, Tom, and to everybody at home. Thanks for listening, and hope to see you next time. I've been Will Evans. This has been Rock and Roll Farming. Thank you, and good night.